So, good morning all of you. Today actually we are trying to understand something about requirement discovery. Here in requirement engineering, the first thing that we are talking today is about requirement discovery. Basically, here we are trying to learn how to gather the requirement. Okay, so let me start with the first thing, which is introduction about the requirement discovery. Here, let me tell you that it is a process of gathering information. Till now, we have understood that requirement needs to be gathered. Sometimes it is not particularly known. In that case, we try to elicitate the requirements. We do something, we try to formulate some of the actions so that we could get the requirements out of those customers or any stakeholders. Okay, so we try to understand here actually we are trying to understand what should we do to get that particular requirements out of those minds. Okay, so here in requirement discovery, we are talking that it is a process of gathering the information about the required and existing systems. Okay, the system on which they are working and the system which they want from us. And we try to find out the user and system requirements from this information. Interaction is with system stakeholders, from managers to external regulators, and systems normally have a range of okay, we will talk about the stakeholders in next slide. The thing is, here we are trying to understand that how do we discover the requirements. Okay, we try to interact with multiple people. These peoples will be considered as stakeholders. Okay, these stakeholders may range from managers to the internal users and to the external regulators as well. Okay, so all those people who are somehow related with this system, somehow they are going to interact or affect our system, they all are being considered as stakeholders. So we will normally have a range of stakeholders. Let me show you one example here. Our one example was about the pumping machine for this insulin, right? So for that particular approach, suppose you are having a system, you are trying to build a system for that, who are thinking which is especially for this medical kind of thing, right? So who are the people who will interact with it and who will be considered as stakeholders? So some of the things you may consider it as default. You will understand that doctors are some people whom you think who will interact with the system. Nurses are something who will interact with the system. Medical represent this thing, reception. Receptionist will be there who will try to interact with the system. Now this is IT staff. You may not be aware, but still you will have to understand that these are the IT staff who will be responsible for installing and maintaining the system. So you will also have to interact with these people to understand that are they capable and what is the feasibility of using these technology and what are the things. Okay, other than that, the patients themselves. Okay, some of the patients with whom these interactions will take place, right? So I believe here you can understand that if for a system to be used in a medical hospital, there are certain range of stakeholders who can be used. Apart from these stakeholders, there may be related to some other stakeholders like medical ethics manager, such people who are more aware of ethics to be used in these things, and whatever the interaction or whatever the system we are going to build, they can tell us about the ethical guidelines for patient care, whether our system is able to meet it or not, right? Or what are the guidelines or ethics related things which should be taken care of while developing the system. Some can be healthcare managers. These managers may be those who obtain management information from the system. Okay, they will try to see all the generated report and such kind of things from the system. There will be certain medical report staff who are responsible for ensuring the system information can be maintained and preserved. So you will have to talk to these people also. They are responsible for preserving the data, maintaining the these things, and record keeping of the procedures. Okay, whatever we are trying to understand here, that these are the range of stakeholders for this example. So whatever your example will be there, you will have to find out those people who are somehow related to this. Okay, whether they are directly interacting with the system or somehow they are generating something which is affecting our system. Okay, so this is the list of stakeholders. Now we are coming towards some of the ways for discovering the requirements. The first way is interviewing. Okay, we will see some more ways in the coming slides. For now, let us start with interviewing. Interviewing is very simple thing. You understand that you will have to ask some questions, the customers will answer them, and you will get to know what are the requirements, right? So they can be formal or informal with the stakeholders. Who all these stakeholders will be there for your system? You will interact with them. Okay, you will ask certain questions, they will give certain answers, and you will understand the requirement, right? These interviews can be closed interviews and open interviews. Okay, closed interviews are such where you will have predetermined list of questions, that these are the questions only we are going to ask these stakeholders and get the answers. And for such questions, if there are some conflicting requirements, we will get to understand that there is a conflict on this, right? However, there are certain open interviews. Open interviews means questions are not predetermined. In this case, questions are something which will come according to the flow. Okay, whatever we are talking, accordingly some new things are explored, and accordingly the questions are framed and answered and noted down, right? Now here we have to understand this interview has to be effective. So how can we make our interview effective, right? Effective, when an interview is effective, when we are able to understand the requirements out of it, right? So here it is suggested that you should be open minded. Okay, avoid preconceived ideas about the requirements. What happens? You have an objective, means customer will give you the objective that for medical purpose we are trying to make. So you have an idea that okay, you will need this thing and this thing done, right? So you should not have that kind of preconceived ideas about the requirement, and you should be able to listen to the stakeholders. Okay, you should be open minded and try to listen whatever they are saying. Okay, prompt the interviewee to get discussions going using a springboard questions, a requirements proposal, or by working together on a prototype system. So somehow you can propose to have discussions. How? If you have list of questions, or you can show your requirement proposal that you have built till now, or some working prototype you can show them to get the discussion going on, right? These are the ways you should keep in mind while interviewing. However, one thing that I can say is what actually happen in practice. Okay, interview, definitely you have to talk to these people to get the requirements, right? So what happens normally, a mix of closed and open-ended interview takes place, where some list of questions you have already framed that these are the questions that I will ask. Other than that, some open questions may also be there, as according to the situation some issues might be explored, and some new questions can come out and their answers can be noted down. That will help us in understanding the requirement in a better way, right? Now, interviews are good for getting an overall understanding of what a stakeholder do and how they might interact with the system. Okay. So, here we are talking that interviews are good for these things. If you have to understand how these stakeholders are interacting and working with the system, interviews are helpful. But interviews are not good for understanding the domain requirements. Sometimes some domain requirements are actually in questionnaire. What happens, you will ask certain question and they will answer. They might answer in using some specific domain specific terminology that might be difficult for engineers to understand, means our requirement engineers. Okay. So it may be difficult to use this interview in domain requirements. However, let me tell you some more reason that domain knowledge, sometimes to the domain experts, what happen, domain experts are so familiar with this domain and their uses, they think that others will also easily understand this thing. This is not a big thing. Okay. So, because of these reasons, interview might not be that much suitable for understanding the domain requirements. So, the next thing that we will see is scenarios. Okay. Scenario is real life example, how actually the system is being used or may be used in future. Okay. So, you will have to describe the real life example that what happens. Okay. Description of the starting position, how it will start, normal flow of the events, that after starting this thing happens and after that this may happen or this may happen. What can go wrong, that should be written, and other concurrent alternatives, that what are the other possibilities to be used, right. Now, when the scenario finishes, what is the output, what actually we want. Okay. These are sort of things which are important to be noted down. Suppose in our example of that medical thing, where we try to have understanding of patients, right. Patients will be there, we will have to these doctors and nurses will work with them, right. So, what is the initial assumption? Initial assumption is that some receptionist is there on the desk. They will create a record for this particular patient and store their name, address, age and some more information. Then after that, a nurse will log in the system and connect to and try to collect the medical history. Now, how will she do this? They will search for the patient as the record already exists, search, and then chooses some menu options to add the medical history. Then what are the related information they want to store, mental health, what its type of data will be, existing medical condition, whatever the how it would be done, whether it will be selected from drop down list or some open free text is there. These all the things will be there written in this form. Other than that, we have to note down what can go wrong, right? So the patient record is not found. In that case, whatever your situation is there, the nurse can create a record. Whatever you are writing, you will have to get it approved by those customers that yeah, it is okay or not, right? Patient condition and medical are not entered. In that case, what we have to do? Patient is unwilling to share their information. In that case, what you need to do? So such things you have to mention here. Other things are other activities. Record may be consulted but not edited. Some of these other activities might be there. What will happen after completion of this record that data was collected? Then the patient record including medical history is entered in the database, okay, and a record is added to the system log showing that start and end time of the session and the nurse involved. Whatever the required thing is there, it should be mentioned here. So this is how you make the scenario. While getting the scenario and while understanding a scenario, you also make a diagram. We call it use case diagram, okay. Use case diagram in UML, actually it helps you in understanding the scenario based requirements, okay. So here actually you will have a set of use cases which describe the possible interactions with the system. Who are the people who are going to interact with the system, and what are the cases, what are the functions they want to perform, right? So other supplement may also be there, graphical supplements may be there, or some tabular descriptions can also be kept. Other than this, some sequence diagram can also be built. Sequence diagram will be a little detail of this use case, where you will start with a start button that yes, from here you have started, and after that what are the steps involved with the timeline, okay. After this event, this is the next event that occurred, that after that this event might occur, right. So this is the way in the sequence diagram. Let me show you an example of use case diagram. So here actually we are showing, sometimes we keep these use cases in this thing. So here actually we are showing that these are the use cases or the functionalities that we want, right. So who will interact with this thing? Medical receptionist with register a patient. Managers are some people who can view the personal information of the patients. Receptionist, definitely they can also. Now a nurse can view a record, edit a record, maybe some other information if you want to add. These can be done. Doctors, what doctors can do? They can view the record, they can not edit, they can edit also, okay. And consultation, they can also set up a consultation with them, right. Now they can, whatever statistics are coming, they can export the statistics, they can also generate a report. Such kind of things are also possible. So this is an example of use case diagram. However, when we will see the use case in detail in UML, we will see again this thing. We will try to understand that these are the actors, these are the use cases, how they are represented, what this means. Okay, let us see something about the third way actually I should say to understand the requirements. Okay, this is ethnography. What is ethnography? Ethnography is a way of understanding the requirement by observing and analyzing how people actually they are working. Okay, so what happens? A social scientist spends a considerable time in observing and analyzing how people actually work. So here also, we the software engineers who are gathering the requirements, they need to observe the people if they are using ethnography. So you will have to understand that some of the complex systems are there where the domain specific requirements are not actually explained nicely in interviews or scenarios. Okay. So because of that, what happens, you will have to see the work yourself. Okay. And for that purpose, this ethnography is very helpful. Okay. So in this case, people need not explain everything. Here actually we will be there and understand their requirements. Okay. Whatever these factors, social and organizational factors of importance may be observed, you can understand these things also. Have shown that work is usually richer. Sometimes whatever they are explained, the work is actually richer and more complex than suggested by simple system models. Okay. Okay. So now let us see these things. Okay. Scope of ethnography. Where can we use this ethnography, right? So requirements that are derived from the way that people actually work rather than the way in which process definitions suggest that they ought to work, right? So something when it is explained, we understand that this is the way it should work, but actually it may work in a different way. So if we want to understand actually how it is working and we want to go for it, then we can go for ethnography. Actually, here we are trying to understand how actually the work is process is there, right? Requirements that are derived from cooperation and awareness of other people's activity. Okay, other people's activities, whatever is going on, if they are somehow deriving how people are working together, these kind of things can also be observed, right? So awareness of what other people are doing leads to changes in the way in which we are doing things, right? So we if others are doing good work, they have completed 10 tasks and we have still completed only 2 tasks, so we feel like, oh, we should also work more, right? So such kind of thing will be there. So we can observe these things there. It is effective for understanding existing processes but cannot identify new features. Okay, whatever features are going on there, whatever functionalities we do, whatever the actions are being taken place there, we can understand those things by observing the people. However, it may be difficult or it may not be possible to understand new features to be introduced, right? Let me tell you about focused ethnography. What happens in focused ethnography? Sometimes this ethnography, if at all it is focused on something, how it is focused? Actually by prototyping. Here what happens, actually you have to understand that we combine ethnography with prototyping. So you develop a prototype and then you observe. Then you observe how it is, how people are working. Then you try to understand what are the things you need to do. Okay. So prototype development results in unanswered questions which focus the ethnographic analysis. So because of this prototyping, you are able to understand that these are the requirements which are not still implemented. These are the things that we need to implement. So to understand these few things, you will use this ethnographic behavior to understand those requirements in detail. Okay. So what can be the problem with ethnography? That it studies only the existing practices which may have some historical basis those bases which may no longer be relevant. Okay. Now let me show you this diagram which relates how ethnography is related to prototyping. You perform the ethnographic analysis, you observe people, try to understand the requirement, and you have a meeting. You try to brief that these are the few requirements I have understood, whether it is correct or not. You do the same with focus, means with prototypes. You make a prototype, try to understand the requirement. From here a requirement can be finalized, yes, it is done. You can come to prototype evaluation, or you can generate the system prototype which which may need some briefing again. So you can cycle here for some time and then you can make a prototype for evaluation. During this you can also use generic system development processes, whatever you have. Having the knowledge of these few things, we have actually discussed three things here. One was interview, whether it was open or closed. Scenario, we will write down all the things in a stepwise. You may use use case diagrams or some other kind of diagrams as well. Then you went through ethnography, that you can get the requirements by observing the people also. Here you also understand how focused ethnography can be used. And after that, now I believe in the next video we can see something about validation and management. For now, thank you.